Hey everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. So I hope you guys all had a great Thanksgiving. I found that I had a lot to be thankful for over the past week of Thanksgiving. Number one, I'm thankful for all of you guys, but I also was incredibly thankful for the modicum of justice in three truly disturbing cases. So if you hadn't heard, I wanted to share them with you. First of all, the city of Aurora, Colorado was ordered to pay $15 million to the family of Elijah McClain. Elijah, as you may recall, I've talked about him on the show before. I've done a couple of shows about his case. He was the very gentle 23-year-old young man who used to go and play the violin for shelter animals. He also seemed to be possibly on the spectrum from things that he said to the police, from the way he was acting. Well, he was murdered by the police and the EMTs after they tackled him to the ground, and then they injected him with a lethal dose of ketamine because some obviously bigoted asshole decided to call the police and report him for daring to walk home from a convenience store while black. Of course, no amount of money can ever ease the pain of losing someone you love. But let's just hope that the people of Colorado, the ones who will actually be paying for these callous actions, hopefully they will rise up and demand change and accountability. But anyway, the next just verdict that we received last week was in regard to the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally that left Heather Heyer dead and numerous people grievously injured. That deadly event followed a nighttime march that you guys will remember of mostly white men, likely angry that they're still living in their mommy's basements, marched with tiki torches. They were chanting things like, "Jews will not replace us." And there were almost 24 defendants in that case. They were all loudmouth, well-known, walking testicles who think they're men, including neo-Nazis, self-avowed white supremacists, people like Richard Spencer, Jason Kessler, Christopher Cantwell. He's the guy otherwise known as the crying Nazi because he literally cried when he found out that he was actually going to get in trouble for some of his illegal activity. Well, 7 of these almost 24 had already been hit with default judgments because they refused to take part in the trial. And many of the remaining vile pieces of human excrement were decided that they were going to represent themselves in court because we've seen how great that goes. And this was in some of them were due to their egregious behavior toward their own attorneys who said, "I'm not dealing with this. I'm not doing this." So the plaintiffs in this case allege that the neo-Nazis and their organizations conspired to incite violence that day. And the defendants did a horrible job. They did themselves no favor in court. Some of them blurted out racist statements while on the stand. They treated the whole trial as if it was a joke. They were acting as if they had some sort of ace up their sleeve. I was very concerned, very nervous when I saw the way that they were behaving, because I thought it meant that they knew something that we didn't. What it turns out, I believe, is that they watched for 4 years of the Trump presidency, white supremacists get away with everything, get away with just about everything under the sun, and they probably believed that their luck would never run out. Unfortunately for them, their own words came back to bite them in the ass, and it allowed the jury to award a whopping $26 million to the victim. However, it's unlikely that the plaintiffs in this case, the victims in this case, are going to see the vast majority of that. So here's why. Of that 26 million, James Fields Jr. is the man who's responsible for $13.5 million in combined compensatory and punitive damages. So basically half of that money. Fields, of course, is the man who is the actual murderer of Heather Heyer. He's the one who rammed his car into Heather and other victims, and he's currently serving a life sentence plus 419 years. So it's unlikely that he's ever going to pay a dime of that. However, all of the other defendants were ordered to pay $500,000 each for taking part in the conspiracy. And 5 of these white supremacist organizations were each ordered to pay $1 million for that same crime, for the conspiracy. In addition, 5 of the defendants were ordered to pay $500,000 to 2 specific plaintiffs for compensation for their injuries, and another $1 million for punitive damages. But that's collectively. So not 500,000 and 1 million from each of the 5 defendants. That's, the 5 defendants paying them all collectively that amount. The defendants claim that they're destitute, that they have no ability to pay because their legal fees ate up all of their money, and, sob story. I mean, miniature violin, poor things, womp womp, and thoughts and prayers. So we'll see, but it does send a message, and it should put white supremacists and neo-Nazis on notice that you want to wipe out your entire family. You want to wipe out every dime that you've ever made and every dime you will make in the future, that we'll take from you. Go for it. So anyway, the third verdict to be thankful for is in regard to Ahmaud Arbery's murder. 25-year-old Ahmaud, as you may recall, was hunted down in broad daylight, killed, shot in the middle of the street. 3 men walked free for months after his murder in February of 2020, until a video of the entire stomach-churning, disgusting incident was leaked online, which was leaked, just so happens, by those 3 men, thinking that it would exonerate them, or at least one of the 3 men. But even then, even after the video came out, prosecutors declined to charge them. Well, one of those prosecutors who declined to indict, who declined to bring charges, has now been indicted herself. I've talked about her before. I said that she was, in trouble for her actions due to her allegedly inappropriate, potentially illegal interference in this case. Well, finally, after public outcry hit a fever pitch, 35-year-old Travis McMichael, his father and former officer, 65-year-old Greg McMichael, and their friend who filmed the murder and then leaked it, 52-year-old William Bryan, they were all indicted for a slew of crimes. Their crimes that were listed included malice murder, 4 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of aggravated assault, 1 count of false imprisonment, and 1 count of engaging in a criminal attempt to commit a felony. Well, a jury last week found that all 3 men were guilty for varying degrees of murder. The shooter, Travis McMichael, was found guilty on all 9 counts across the board for which he was charged. That included 1 count of malice murder, meaning that he intended to kill Ahmaud. The jury also found that his father, Greg McMichael, the former cop, he was found guilty on all counts with the exception of malice murder. And William Bryan, the man, like I said, who filmed this murder and chased Ahmaud down in his car, was found guilty of 6 different charges. Now, some of the guilty verdicts against Greg McMichael and William Bryan include felony murder, as I mentioned, and that's a Georgia statute. It applies apparently if someone causes the death of another person while committing another felony. And although neither one of those 2 were found guilty of intentionally killing Ahmaud, their sentence will be the same as the murderer, as the gunman, because felony murder, if a conviction for that crime, also carries a mandatory life sentence. not minimum, not like, oh, it's up to the judge, like all this stuff we're seeing with the Capitol, is a mandatory life sentence. So it's now going to be up to the judge to decide only if any of these men will be eligible for parole in 30 years, which means that likely Greg McMichael and William Bryan, because of their age, are going to die in prison. Now, what I found stunning in this trial is the amount of racism that was on display by the defense attorneys and how completely out of touch they are. They did their best to make sure that nearly the entire jury was white, first of all. They struck down almost all potential Black jurors with the exception of one. And I think it gave them a false sense of security. I think that they, as so many others have, are misreading the room, right? They're misreading the country. I think they believe that those white jurors would be just as racist as they are and as the defendants, and that they'd give them a pass. And it seemed that they tried to pander to the jurors' racist tendencies. At one point, Greg McMichael's attorney complained to the court that there were too many Black pastors in the courtroom, and he said that it was going to intimidate the jury. And then the defense attorneys also tried to say that everyone in the neighborhood was afraid of Ahmaud because, of course, he's a Black man. Why wouldn't you be afraid, right? White people should automatically be afraid of him. Freaking bigots. And then the final nail in the coffin, I think, was when one of Greg McMichael's attorneys was making her closing argument. Rather than trying to elicit sympathy for her clients or trying to find common ground, instead, she took that moment to try to dehumanize Ahmaud, the victim who was shot 3 times at point blank range, who was then called the N-word as he took his final breaths. And yes, that happened. William Bryan, their friend, admitted it. And keep this in mind, guys. That's the last thing he heard. I have a friend who's a nurse, and she told me that one of the last things that your body shuts down as you're dying is your hearing. So he heard what they were saying about him as he lie there on the ground, on the hard pavement, dying from multiple gunshot wounds for some unknown reason to him after being terrorized by these 3 people. They call him the N-word as he's dying. That was the last thing he heard on this earth. Yeah. But what did she do? She, Laura Hogue, made the vile comment in her closing argument that not only was Ahmaud not a victim at all, but to prove her point of how horrible he was, that he's not a victim, she said that he was in the neighborhood, quote, in khaki shorts with no socks to cover his long, dirty toenails. I believe that these attorneys overplayed their hand. They misread the room. They're still stuck in the 1950s. They don't understand that the vast majority of the country has evolved and become better. Clearly not everyone, or Ahmaud would still be alive, right? He'd still be alive. But enough of the people in this country have evolved, have become better people to throw these 3 in jail for the rest of their lives. And it's unbelievable to me that even their attorney thought that the video would exonerate them. They thought that the video would show that they were completely in the right, that this was self-defense, chasing a man down, surrounding him with vehicles and weapons, that they were in the right. That is how completely out of touch they are. That is how completely unaware they are of their inherent bias and racism. They seriously don't get it. Even at this point, when everyone in the country thinks that they are, not everyone, but the vast majority of people in this country who saw that video think that they are the scum of the earth and that there's no question that they should be imprisoned for the rest of their lives. And they still don't get it. They still don't see what they did wrong. That's how twisted they are. That's how fucked up in the head these people are. And whatever upbringing they had, that's how it screwed them up. That's how deep it is. It's unbelievable. Anyway, guys, just some good news, just some things. I mean, again, nothing can bring these people back. Nothing can ever make up for the loss of life. But at least we're seeing some justice. At least some of these bigots, some of these white supremacists, some of these vile people are starting to understand that you're not just going to get away with it. You're just going to walk off into the sunset like you used to. So again, hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Take care. I'll talk with you soon.